Hi, Terence. Hi, Mac. We cannot hear
Hello,
anything.
hello. We have to push. We have microphones we can turn on.
Can you hear us?
Oh, yes.
Yes, we can hear you. Yep.
Yeah, we speak in the microphone.
The
Okay.
room is still cleaning out with the 3GPP folks, so we'll going to wait a few minutes, and I'll get organized.
That's fine.
Testing, testing. Yes, that works.
Well, octopods are. Yeah, you're probably right. And what I find is that
And turn down your speakers.
I muted my speakers.
Mute speakers. Mute
And
speakers.
My laptop microphone mute doesn't do anything anymore, which is really bizarre.
If you use the on-site tool, you don't get the microphone.
Yep.
Yeah, but then you don't get the slides.
Yeah, I do get slides. Slides, chat.
But seems to be fine now.
Oh, sorry. Sorry. Yes. You're right. But then you have to make sure you don't make sure you don't send any audio out to the room.
Okay, is this fine now? Sheng, can you hear us remotely?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Well, 10 minutes later, but that's
Yeah,
fine.
yeah.
Everything okay.
We're just checking the feedback loops.
It's nice and cozy in here.
Okay.
You really have all the speakers switched off? Oh,
Want
okay.
me to look around? Any of the microphones are on.
Yeah, I think the microphones, it's just only one active.
We have 19 participants.
Yeah. Mhm.
19 participants in the. We have the slide clicking block. Participants. Okay, so we have like most people are remote here then.
Did you see anything else?
Nothing red.
Yeah.
The rest, so it's not on.
I think the level is just very high. So okay. Well, Sheng, please tell us when the audio quality from the room is not good anymore. Otherwise, let's get started. Welcome, everybody. Sorry for the strange setup. So this is the large site meeting room, but hopefully we'll get along as long as everybody in the room switches off their microphones and speakers on their notebook and just uses the microphones in the room. Okay. Next slide. Wait a second. There we go. Okay. So note well. I'll let that stay for a second here. Please, everybody, remember to operate by these rules. Read the appropriate RFCs. But looking at the participants, I think you would all be aware of this by now. Administrative. So yeah, if you're in the room, please join one of the tools. Best the on-site participation rule, then you don't have any audio issues, but then you'll be counted. And we know how many people will have been in the room. Collaborative editing on the notes page. Please, everybody, help with it. I'll try to lead it. And then there are further details on the IETF conduct guidelines, and those have been asked by ISG to be shown as well. So, share slides. Let me quickly go through the doc status of the documents. So we have the RFC editor cluster C528, which is still fairly unpopulated. We've got JWS voucher sitting in it, and we'll fill up this cluster with the Brewski PRM, constraint Brewski proxy, and finally 8366 BIS as the reference every of the other ones is waiting for until it releases. Brewski PRM, there was ongoing work. We'll have a few slides to show the summary, as the authors, I think, are not present on this IETF, and I'll add them to. I'll present them during the chair slides. So Mahesh has said that he'll basically has it on. Let me see that I find what he was just sending me. Yeah, so it was pulled back because of the dependency on 8366 BIS. And so he's still waiting for us for the go-ahead if we want to progress PRM any step further than where it currently stands. So, and I think we can discuss that with the authors during the weekly meeting or so, because other than somebody jumping up to the mic and having an opinion on that, we'll probably not have quorum for that progress decision. Oh, Stefan, yeah.
Yeah, maybe just as a note. So based on the discussion that we had with Mahesh, the idea was to leave the all of the different drafts that currently have a dependency on RFC 8366 bis into that state to make editing of those documents easier compared to progressing them to the RFC editors queue.
Okay, good. So we'll keep it that way. Okay, then we've got Brewski Cloud that was also worked on. It's in the AD queue. The authors think that all the AD questions have been answered in the last 2 revisions. Brewski Cloud. And so, yeah, so Mahesh just sent the email that he had forwarded that to ISG for evaluation. So that is moving forward. So that's good. Forwarded by Mahesh, ISG. Yeah, so one of the problems of the late scheduling is that we're conflicting with another ops group that Mahesh needs to be at. So we were discussing these things before the meeting with him. Okay, Stefan, do you want to simply talk to the slides quickly, the PRM updates?
Yeah, I can do that. So essentially what we did was the last version, version 18, was the one that was an ISG evaluation. We got several discuss and comments and nits for that. So mainly what we addressed in the discuss, because I think those are the most interesting changes there. We did some further clarification of the TLS usage clarification. Specifically regarding the usage of TLS 1.2, because Brewski PRM as Brewski still uses TLS 1.2, but emphasizes to use TLS 1.3. So with that, I think we found some agreement to also address the comments received from the UTA draft that was discussed in the same telechat as Brewski PRM. And there was a request that every new protocol that's being defined shall use TLS 1.3. So Brewski PRM is not a new protocol. It's basically an extension to Brewski. And therefore, I think we found a way to describe it in the document. So we definitely have an own section that deals with that type of problem. But we included some further information regarding hints for reactions on HTTP requests to avoid denial of service attacks. Also to update the error handling according to BCP RFC 9205, and then some further hints regarding time synchronization and also the language tagging and the status information that is provided for Brewski PRM. Other than that, we had some comments and nits that were addressed, nothing very spectacular, but at least it improved the reading of the document and the structure. So based on that, as agreed with Mahesh, we put the current PRM in a kind of waiting state until RFC 8366 bis is ready. So that's in a rush what we have.
Thank you very much. Okay, so 8366 bis. That was also nicely worked out on, and Michael will give a quick update on that later. Then a constraint voucher and constraint joint proxy also heavily being worked on, primarily the joint proxy also slot in the meeting. Discovery 07, trying also to get to the end of this by, plan at 124, sorry, typo. Also talk about that GRASP distribution. We checked with the authors, and they're still looking to work on POC validation. So I would be suggesting that we might want to park the document for 1 year. What do you think, Shane?
That would be fine. That's the argument we have, and it remains.
Okay, we'll park it. And what else do we have? Right, so we've got new documents adopted since last IETF. So we've got the registrar considerations and the MASA considerations. So yeah, definitely would love to hear more people reviewing them. Michael will talk about that during the meeting. And then likewise, constraint grasp, we'll also talk about this. I've also kind of just as an interested contributor, I'm not sure if that's share role or not, asked for a slot in the core working group on tomorrow to explain to them, because there is so much interrelationship with CoAP that it would be great to understand the opinions of that working group with that. And then we have 2 further non-working group slots in this meeting. And another typo, sorry about that. Okay, so that was the working group chair slide. So agenda bashing is now. If anybody wants to stand up and wants to talk about something we haven't thought of, that's your time now. Otherwise, we'll go over to, what's the next one? That's the constraint Bruski. Let's go.
Yeah, I'll just enable the audio. So I hope everyone can hear me. I can request slides here, I think.
Ask to share, yeah.
Press request slides, and then need to select them somewhere, I guess.
Did they delegate you?
I'm not sure. I can stop slides.
From him to
Yeah, no, I mean, I see the
you have to
bar.
stop. You have to stop sharing your slides.
I have to stop sharing the slides. Okay. Stop slides. All right.
And then you should get a request from him.
Yes. Okay.
I'm trying to toggle requests.
I need to let it run down to 0, I think. Yeah.
Okay.
I have granted.
Select this. Right. Okay. I see them also on the screen here, so that works. Very good. So there's basically constraint Bruski and the constraint join proxy in one slide deck here. So I'll just have a brief recap here of the goal. Constraint Bruski is basically Bruski onboarding for constraint devices suitable for example, 6-LoWPAN mesh networks and other constrained IP networks. So we would like everything to be minimal data size, round trips, code overhead, and optional functions, because that increases complexity and testing efforts. So it's kind of a short summary, and then there's the summary as a picture. So this shows on the left a mesh network where a new device wants to onboard the mesh network, but it doesn't have the security credentials yet. So it uses constraint Bruski here to get basically onboarded by the registrar component with the help of the MASA server, so that it can basically join this mesh network as a trusted device. So now we move to the main part of the presentation. So the updates we had since the last version, since 27. There was one bit of new functionality added there, so not that much this time. It's basically explaining how information can be stored in the COSE signature header. We don't necessarily recommend doing that or require doing that, but it just explains how it can be done, and that COSE actually does have these features. So there's quite a rich set of information that you can store in the COSE header. And one example is given, for example, a uint value, a single value, that is the timestamp of signing the voucher. And there's a specific parameter used for that that we refer to, that's already existing and defined for COSE. So this is basically just saying you could do that, and then the pledge could also look for that information and parse that information. And for the rest, there has been a lot of editorial fixes and updates. So there's a list here. A reference cleanup, so normative versus informative, some terminology change and formatting. And yeah, that's not so much that we need to talk about here. So you could say, yeah, most issues are closed now, or all the major issues. So it's kind of very near completion. Now we can take a look at what's missing here to complete the document. I think one thing was already mentioned, the dependencies. So we have the RFC A366 BIS as a dependency, so that needs to progress as well. And it also depends on constraint join proxy for some part of the functionality. Also, I noticed in the status that I think it's still in working group last call, this document from a couple of years ago. Not sure if that's correct, but I think a second working group last call would be advisable because there has been many changes in the versions in the meantime. And I think those were all good changes, but at least we should give a formal opportunity for all people to review that again, to look at it. Like now is the time to look at it again and see what changed. Also, I want to remind people, that's the last bullet here, that earlier review comments were addressed. So I looked up in the data tracker what's there. And on the slide there, you see the ready, almost ready with nits items of the last couple of reviews that were done on earlier versions. So the question is here, what's still needed? Any new actions or reviews needed based on the new content or not? Because these reviews were made on the content of a couple of versions back. So these people who did the reviews might want to check this out. I'm not sure what the formal process for that is. Should we individually ask them like, hey, you can look at the diff here?
We have to bug them. There's no process.
Yeah, okay. So we just ask them to do that basically. Except the people who said ready, maybe though. Is that I can maybe include those as well. Okay.
I think it's the text where you say in email, thank you very much for really wholesomely liking all my feedback that I fixed and that all your problems have been solved.
Yeah.
Okay. Kind of, you always assume the most positive, and if they disagree, they can come back to you.
Sure. Okay. Yeah, that will be nice to conclude it that way. And then for the working group last call restart. Yeah, what do you think about that?
I need to try to remember if it was me or Sheng or even somebody else as shepherds, but basically you need to bug the shepherd to do another review round, and then I think we can go into working group last call. It's with the shepherds is always a little bit the problem whether you can you start the working group last call and then the shepherd doesn't necessarily have time within the 2 weeks, right? So that's
first check
exactly.
the document shepherd. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I'm the document shepherd for the constraint joint proxy. I think for the document shepherd, what we most concerned about the update the document shepherd is whether there are new situation needs to be mentioned by the document shepherd, such like the new IPR disclosure or new POC worth mentioning, or anything such like that. This kind of magnificent change. I don't think the change in the draft content is not much relevant to the document shepherd, as long as we think that's matured enough. I think that's mature. We think that's mature enough from the first document shepherd. So if there are such like the new IPR disclosure or new POC, please the authors tell the document shepherd we can definitely do the update for the document shepherd. Thanks.
Okay, so maybe the authors also need to individually consider these questions, right? About known POC implementations or known IPR, and then report to the list basically if there is anything.
Yeah, I mean that type of information the shepherds will typically ask the authors to provide if it's not already clear, so that we can put in the write-up. Arthur and sorry, I don't know your name. Can you folks simply make sure that you join in so that you're counted with a local tool or the full tool?
Okay.
Okay. Any more? Thank you very much, Esco. Any more questions for the constraint?
Yeah, there's some more coming for joint proxy now.
Okay.
Actually. Yeah. So this was the constraint Brewski section. So there's some list of implementations here as well that I just repeat every time. Nothing new there, I think, but just as a reminder. So this is the constraint joint proxy part. part 2 of the presentation, also advanced with one version. And now we have the same picture again here with the constrained pledge basically joining that network, doing the onboarding securely. And now there is this element highlighted. So we have the thing called JP or joint proxy. So this highlights what the joint proxy is, how it's used. So it's basically the neighbor of the device that wants to onboard, and it helps the neighbor to get on the network, even though the neighbor doesn't have the security credentials yet, and the certificate to be able to join the network. So it's acting as a proxy. So the updates we had since the last version. Here we have quite some new function updates, basically. Those were still pending based on issues that were raised in GitHub in the issue tracker. So some more security considerations were added. For example, you could have a genuine joint proxy that is trusted device, but that gets tricked into relaying to a malicious registrar. So that's possible. So it's kind of a scenario of an on-network attacker. So an attacker is basically on the trusted network somehow in a compromised device, and then the traffic might be relayed to that. So that's added just to complete the security considerations there. There is now a solution basically described for using multiple registrars. This is something that will come up later in the Brewski discovery draft, so this is ongoing work. There could be multiple registrars in principle, supporting multiple onboarding protocols. You could even have one host having 2 registrars integrated, or basically multiple onboarding protocols. So this kind of tries to solve it for all such cases. If we solve it already now, basically the idea is you don't get into trouble later. Also, the clarification is made that registrar addresses are not only discovered, which was in the previous text sometimes said, so it's registrars are discovered, but it can also be configured. So basically, there can be a network-wide configuration saying, okay, this is the IP address of the registrar and this is the port. So that's up to the specific, basically, implementation that uses constrained Brewski. We added some considerations and text for implementers of joint proxy. So we have 2 modes, stateful and stateless, and we basically state now when you need to implement only one of the 2 modes. So there are some cases where that's possible. So if you're, for example, integrating this into another standard, an ecosystem that only depends on one of the modes, you don't have to implement the second one. So that we explain. Finally, security was kind of improved. So there was a lot of review feedback from earlier reviews, from IETF reviews, was basically, hey, security is not good enough there yet. You don't need necessarily only encryption. You also need integrity protection for the traffic that is being relayed. So that's also dealt with now. So we have a very lightweight way described to do encryption and integrity protection. And also a couple of editorial updates were made, basically. So there was a mistake in the format definition of the JPY header. So that was fixed. So with that, we also conclude basically all the open items that were there. So this is also nearing completion, I think, at least. And again, the proposal here is to do a second working group last call, because the last one was quite a while ago, and now the text has kind of changed considerably. So that would be nice. And again, here we have the reviews that have been addressed. And I think we should also kind of mail the individual reviewers here to say how it was addressed and whether they agree or not agree. So that seems good.
Yep.
Okay,
Yep.
Thank you. I think
do
this
that.
should be it for the constraint cluster. That's the thank you and the links.
Yeah, when you feel you're ready, just send to the chair so that we'll check with the shepherd and then.
Yeah. First do the shepherd check for that. Okay, good.
Right. So I think the next one is
No,
me.
I have a comment.
Questions?
So on the list or on the co-op list, I don't know where that happened, both places. The business of our URL, our scheme, co-op plus JPY, right?
Right.
So I tried, so we were pushed, I thought, to that by some other expert reviewer who told us that we shouldn't be telling people it's co-op S when it's JPY, right? And now we're being
Right.
pushed back about what? About register. This is, Christian was the expert reviewer for a different part of it, right? I can't remember which part that was. So we kind of got like one expert reviewer said go this way, and then another one said go this way. And I was looking for where we changed that, and I couldn't find the exact details.
Yeah, well, do know more about it. So we used initially the co-op S scheme for a protocol that we defined, which was not co-op S at all. So it was not DTLS over UDP with co-op inside. So the simple answer was, well, you cannot use a co-op S link for that because it's not the right protocol. You have basically defined a new protocol, and I agree with that. So it would need another scheme if you want to express that as a link with basically a scheme identifier.
Well, I mean, if the IETF is confused about this, we cannot simply go the lazy way and let ISG review finally decide on that, because it doesn't seem as if we have, some deployed legacy stuff to defend, right? So we're
No, but the point is that now we're told that the co-op plus is not cool.
No, that's fine. But
Okay,
I mean,
and so the question is, so we said, okay, so we just call it JPY, and I don't care, but
at some point in time, we've spent enough time in the working group and trying to dig and ask other working groups, right? So during ISG review, there is more pull on getting these things fixed in a reasonable time.
Fair enough.
That would be my...
Fair enough.
Yeah, I think there's a very simple solution. So you just indeed call the scheme JPY. I think that's what the discussion converts to, and it's shorter as well, so it saves you 5 bytes on the wire.
Well, if you actually feel that you'll never have the JPY with a different header, then co-op S.
I think so.
Well,
Famous
maybe I
last
can add
words.
something here. So we haven't made a protocol JPI that was basically designed for transporting DTLS with co-op inside, so transporting co-op S messages. But what you sometimes see is that it tends to get used for other protocols as well. So I have that same experience with...
You use whatever you want. I don't think you'll get any more, argument about that from the working group. And
yeah, so I think the JPY would be good because it makes it generic also. So you can also transport other things. And what I typically saw, in my other work before, so not in IETF scope, but once you have such a relaying protocol, people tend to use it like, hey, we can use it for this other protocol too, because it just works. And
sure,
that's a nice property. So we might as well define it in a general way, basically. So then you can drop the co-op name from the scheme. I think that should be okay. And then see if any more problems come up, because there is a new scheme being defined in any way that gets some thorough review, I guess, because there are a lot of arguments like in the formal documents, it says, well, before you define a new scheme, please mind that you shouldn't. And if there's another way to do it, don't make a new scheme.
okay.
So we can go ahead with the shortening. I think that would be ideal.
So I think
yeah, that issue came up a bit after I made the slide, so that's why it's not on the slide.
okay, so I think then we go on to the next slot. That's the discovery. That's me. Okay, so we had very helpful reviews from Stefan, from Arthur, and an initial review from Matt Kovac. Wanted to talk first about a possible open issue. Arthur was suggesting to split up the document from his understanding that the data model, the IANA registries are the core of the document. And so he identified the transparent proxy behavior and the pledge IDEF ID details as things that could be split out. So my answer from the author's side was that the goal of the document is really the auto-configuring of resiliency, automatic extensible Bruschi operations for arbitrary discovery protocols. And then the things like the IANA registry, those things, they do cover the majority of the document, but they're really just the dependencies, right? So, so I've tried to change the abstract and the text of the document to make that scope more explicit, right? So the title says discovery, so it's basically all the functionalities that the actual agents, the registrar, all the components of Bruschi need to do with discovery. That's the scope. And the majority of the thing turns out to be a big IANA registry that is trying to make this thing so that we don't have a mesh of really confusing drafts that fight against each other how to do it. And so the actual uses there, the pledge IDEF ID and the transparent proxy, each of them are less than 5 pages. So I don't think that going the way of three drafts makes the process in the IETF easier. It's more like that the people are reading the registry and everything, have no idea what to do with it before they understand that they need the other documents to understand how that stuff is being used. So, right, so what are the changes now? I've tried to do this based on what impacts interoperability. So yeah, so the grasp examples were wrong. I also expanded the grasp examples so that they're nicely showing what a registrar supporting multiple variations sends and then what the proxy would send. So I think that makes a lot more sense. Then I think Stefan was pointing out that we should make the abbreviation CMS more explicit. It's really CMS with JSON encoding, because he sees the possibility that somebody in the future may want to use CMS with some other encoding, and then it would be a lot clearer when we knew that CMS, as we use it now, stands for CMS with JSON. So that would be encoded on the wire, so that's a change. In the registry also, that came from Arthur, clarification that the word Bruschi is confusing, right? So Bruschi means everything overall, but we're also talking about specifically the context of Bruschi over TCP. So in the registry, that's now called T Bruschi, and then we have C Bruschi constrained T Bruschi. So Mr. RFC 8995 has a okay, thumbs up.
Sounds
Okay, good. So then improvements.
But we're going to want iBrewski for the Apple people.
All right, so if we get Stuart to review this document, then I'll have that argument with him. So I've asked him. So define the spec as an update to Bruschi PRM, because I think all the text about the IDEF ID stuff are clarifications and potentially also, you know, in conflict with some minute details in there. So hopefully that makes sense. I rewrote the abstract to explain the goals of the document. That was what I said in the first slide. Then Matt was really coming, you know, cold turkey into all of this stuff. So the introduction, I kind of enumerated a couple of really, you know, deployment issue that you run into, as opposed to the very abstract text that I had in the beginning, right? So you're deploying a second registrar and hell breaks loose. It comes from a different vendor, supports a different set of variations, and, you know, pledges and proxies pick the wrong registrar, right? So that type of really from the deployment side, that's how I think. So there was a stupid tooling issue with this C section 1. I'm so sorry for everybody. I still need to figure out with RFC editor how to do this. The whole point was I was trying to refer to the abbreviated things like Bruschi and other in the terminology section. And it seems you can't do this with the current tooling that we have. Yeah, then the typical thing like, what does IP mean? And now in this text, IP means v4 or v6. And if we only talk about v4, we say IPv4. They're actually in the IETF two type of RFC still active that have two different ways to say this. right? The older ones, of course, say IP and mean only IPv4. And the newer ones, the ISG hasn't gotten to a point of saying new RFCs must be written to say that IP means both v4 and v6. But so you always have to write this down. I did add and kept the word roles. That was also kind of raised concern because we didn't have roles in Brusky and RFC 8995, but there we also didn't have the different variations, right? So we still have the role of a registrar, but we have different services, right? We have, you know, TCP-based Brusky service as a registrar, and we have UDP-based registrar service. So kind of, but it's still a registrar, right? So role registrar, service, T-Brusky, C-Brusky. So that's the terminology I've been trying to come up. And then the agents from PRM are also now, beside the pledges, mentioned explicitly as beneficiaries of the discovery because they also need to discover registrars. And there was a lot of duplicate text, so all type of text improvements. So very good to have these reviews. Discovery currently, yeah. So I also explained why we haven't added more discoveries for DNS SD. CA renamed to Trust Anchor. The pledge discovery section was improved, and then new security considerations about there was from Arthur, I think, the insecurity of discovery, and typically the way that you deal with these things, you have a secure domain, right? You have an enterprise network where people are shot when they touch cables, or you have encryption at layer 2 in wireless mesh networks, or if you do an ANIMA network, the ACP gives you that domain security, and that's what you typically do across all these different discovery mechanisms. Right, so next steps. So yeah, we managed to figure out how to get IANA to do the reviews. So they're starting right now. That's actually a long story there. There is a new IANA process, but I don't want to spend time here. So Liu Bing and Matt, I'm still waiting for experts. I'm trying to get a DNS XD expert. So plan is to ask for working group last call for IETF 124.
Yeah, maybe I can chime in there. So I'm one of the authors, so I can't do a review formally, but I will check again especially for DNS SD, because over the past year I've worked really a lot with DNS SD. So also you notice that you keep learning about it over the years, the more you work with it.
Well, actually, the first ANIMA implementation we had in Cisco was using DNS SD internally for discovery already. So that's where we also had some bad experience of how to do it in detail. So hopefully this way all
there's also differences between DNS SD and MDNS discovery, for example. But I think I would also like to do a complete check of that. I can do it, I think, somewhere after the IETF meeting,
sure.
Or maybe after my holiday. I don't know yet. Let's see.
Good. Thank you very much. Yeah. Any other review, of course, more than welcome. Okay. Then we're up to number 3, Mr. Richardson.
Do you have another slide?
I think next step.
Another slide.
Oh, another one. No, yeah.
I'll just mention that I have a joint proxy implementation that obviously does discovery and announcement in both sides, written in Rust, and I'm happy to share it or make it available on the IETF Hackathon VPN, since all we need is layer 2 to make it work. So let me know if you want to do that.
Excellent. Are you going to grab the slide? Yep.
I'll confirm my selection. Okay. Okay. So just 3 slides about 8366 BIS. So, we adopted it a long time ago, and we've gone through a whole bunch of Yang adventures for it, changing it, updating it, completely rewriting it, going back to what we had before and there. So last IETF, there was a lot more story so far. So if you're new to it, I won't repeat that. We don't have time. but go to those slides and, watch the thing. It's a long kind of shaggy dog story. I would say that the most important thing that has not been, from what I can see, at least well reviewed, is the extension mechanism that was put in, I don't know, December ish, based upon the 8520 MUD mechanism for extensions. I've been trying to get this reviewed, read, complained about by Yang people in NetBod, NetConf. I can't never remember which working group does which part, and not been successful doing that. So that, I think, is the potentially that's the potential piece that's controversial. And if we had done this in 8366, we would probably not be revising this document. We would just use it. So I think that's a good thing. I don't know what else to do at this point. I've tried to get on agendas for those groups and failed, or there was too many conflicts or whatever. And oh, that person didn't. Okay, if you wanted to say something, I would be happy to hear from you. There is still bugs in the Yang tool that does the SID allocations. Specifically, when I put new entries into our Yang module, it does not allocate SIDs. I've said, oh, that must be a bug. Tried to go back to the test cases. There is, in fact, exactly that test case. Add a new item, see if it does something, and that one works. So I don't know why this version is different. Maybe to do with groupings or other stuff that's not quite right. I haven't figured it out. So the text in the document that says, please refer to these SID values rather than the ones you generate remains unfortunately valid, right? So we put that in, we said we can't trust the tools to generate the things, so please don't trust the SID files, trust these numbers. Otherwise, the document is unchanged for at least one IETF, and it's certainly ready for working group last call, except for these issues. But we don't have to solve them if they take up time. We can just continue to say, we'll be the first document that allocates SIDs. So there may be other adventures to come. Carlos.
And 8366 bis 2 will simply remove Yang and just do a CDDL for CBOR and JSON. Sorry. Just every time you start speaking about Yang issues, I'm just getting more and more confirmed on that. So that's.
I will not comment. The code of conduct will prevent me from. And anyway, Esco, go ahead.
Oh, well, that must have been since last comment I made, so I will unqueue myself.
Any other comments from remote or anyone else in the room? I would be great if you know anything about Yang or don't know anything about Yang, read it and look at the extensions, see if you understood what to do. I would appreciate feedback on whether I explained it even remotely coherently. Thank you.
And if you're scared of Yang now, well.
It's not hard, it's just annoying. Yeah.
So now I am in the queue. So just a quick question then. If you're not able to resolve this tool issue, you're saying that's not a problem. We can just go ahead with the document and we manually allocate the numbers, basically.
The numbers are in the document are essentially are generatable,
right,
but not correct when you add new items to the. So if we were to revise the Yang, the resulting SID file would not be updated correctly. Right, you add a new entry, you're supposed to get a new SID value, and that is not working. I experienced this with the, whatever it was, private extension that we added, right, to the voucher. Did not allocate a SID number. So, last time, or maybe even the time before when we did this, I said, this is wrong, and I typed it in manually. Okay. So at this point, we're not adding new items to the Yang. And we have an extension mechanism So we should ideally never have to add new items.
I see.
So we can publish it, and just the note that says these numbers are authoritative, not the SID file, unfortunately remains true.
Okay, not a generated SID file, but you can have a manually edited.
The SID file we will provide to IANA will be correct.
Right.
But if somebody goes to try to change it or whatever, then it might not be correct.
Okay, I see.
That's all.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, and we're still looking for a new shepherd for that document. So if you want to get some experience as a shepherd, it's a great opportunity. So let me know. The chairs will be happy to help. Okay, that brings us to number 4, constraint grasp. Longwei, are you able to see on the call? Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you share the slides?
Probably. Did we adopt it?
Can you share the slide? There are some. I can't find how to share it.
I mean, I can try to share for you, and then you tell me when to go to the next slide.
Okay. Okay, I find it.
Oh, so now she's asked to share the screen, so you should be able to.
You have to stop sharing the deck.
No. Oh.
Okay.
No. Wait a second. I passed the slide control to her. Let's see. Constraint. Confirm your selection. And then pass slide control. Yes. So you should be able to move the slides around now.
Yeah. Thank you. Hi, I'm Rongwei Zhu. I would like to introduce our work on C grasp. With the rapid development, IoT is urgent for self-management enabled by grasp. But the grasp is heavy and resource consuming due to it is TCP based. For this reason, the UDP-based and CoAP-based constraint grasp, aka the C grasp, has been proposed, and the draft has already been adopted by ANIMA recently. During the adoption call, we have received a lot discussions and suggestions. The discussion focus on the following issues. The first is that what are the typical applications and ways for C grasp. It's agreed that C grasp can offer grasp services for the constrained devices that cannot use TCP-based grasp, but would be able to use CoAP or UDP. And there are some design issues have been noted, such as the length of the session ID and the symbol related issues. The most important issues is CoAP-based C grasp necessary and practicable, and UDP-based or CoAP-based, which is better. The situation is that the messaging model of CoAP can be reused, since CoAP has the congestion control and the retransmission mechanism. However, the CoAP requires the response layer, and the C grasp transaction layer cannot perfectly match, which is a key challenge to designing the CoAP-based C grasp. For the UDP-based way, inventing a new UDP-based reliable mechanism will raise some questions of validation. such as why reinvent, why not use co-app. Uh, the discussions indicates that a co-app based version is required, since co-app is a lightweight protocol designed for resource-constrained devices and has a mature ecosystem in IoT. And the co-app-based graph should consider the next issues. The key is to decide whether to define C graph simply as an application on top of co-app, or extend the co-app with new message types that would support C grasp. And scoped C grasp multicast flooding mechanism is required, since the co-app lacks hop-to-hop multicast. After the adoption, we have submitted the first version, the version 1 workgroup draft. The draft firstly clarifies the typical application scenarios of C grasp. And the draft also improves the design of C grasp mechanism. And then the draft redefines the co-app-based C grasp. The draft defines the C grasp simply as an application on top of co-app. Firstly, to identify the C grasp service over co-app, the draft intends to define a well-known URI grasp co-app, and the draft reutilize conformable co-app messages for reliable C grasp message distribution. But by passing associated resource processing, and the draft and to make sure the request response correlation, the draft mandates that each C grasp session over co-app should use a unique token with strict rules on reuse, retransmission, and duplicate handling. In addition, the draft also defines the C grasp multicast relay with the loop avoidance and rate limit mechanism. Given that co-app lacks the hop-by-hop multicast. Based on all about discussions and comments, in the future, we will continue to optimize the C grasp over co-app application model and to enhance the scoped per hop C grasp relay forwarding mechanism. And we will also conduct some necessary POC experiments to validate and improve C grasp, and develop an open source prototype in the near future. That's all my presentation. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, just I'd like to remind that I'm trying at the end of the core working group meeting tomorrow, which is responsible for co-op, to give them an overview of what we're trying to achieve and ask them about their opinions about the different options that we have to relate this work to co-op, and then hopefully we'll can take that feedback into account with how we proceed. Oh, for the new folks, please remember to log into the meeting tool so that you're being counted in the room.
Yeah. Okay. I just want to add to Turle's remarks. So there will be this presentation in the core working group tomorrow. let's say it's about co-op versus UDP, right? Is that right?
Yeah,
Or how
I'm
to use
basically
co-op.
listing the three options, right? Can we simply take the message method of co-op and use them in Grasp, or would they yell out theft and don't like it, which was a little bit how I felt Carson's initial response was. And then the second one was to avoid overhead that we would have now to extend co-op with new message types for what we need in Grasp. And the third one is simply what is currently in the draft, which is just make Grasp an application of co-op, which introduces some overhead and doesn't give us all the efficiencies. So that's about.
Yeah, I was also considering that. I was also give a presentation Thursday about, it's for another working group, so ops area working group, about using co-op versus plain UDP for basically network telemetry for large networks. And there they have a similar use case. So they want to have something extremely lightweight and simple and probably not even secured. And there the question came up like, okay, reuse co-op or define a custom protocol that can always be shorter than co-op. Yeah, of course.
Michael on the ANIMA mailing list pointed us to one ISE individual submission draft from Cisco about some IoT protocol that they had built on top of co-op, where you're sitting and wondering why the heck did they use co-op, because it didn't seem to be using anything of co-op. So, and maybe there are other things like that around. So it's kind of no. I mean, you were forwarding that. You were forwarding a pointer to that as an example of somebody using co-op, and when I read through that, it was just using unreliable co-op messages without any. But yeah, I mean, if it's simply a more easily available library in IoT devices than UDP, maybe that's good enough. I don't know.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I have also similar experience with a use case where co-op is used in such a way that it's not even RESTful. It just everything is post messages which are sent, and they use URI path and retransmissions. But for the rest, you could say most of what co-op can offer is not used. But at least in that case, they use a pretty short URI path, so it's only 3 characters. Basically, and that reduces the overhead. If you use /.wellknown/ something Grasp, then you add a lot of bytes of overhead, so fixed bytes with a fixed value that don't have any purpose actually, or no added value except being a really long way to say, okay, this is basically this is the type of packet which could be in 2 bytes as well. So that's something to consider there for co-op. But okay, maybe we should wait for the discussion tomorrow if you get agenda time there.
Yeah, otherwise I'll ask for it at an interim. Yeah, and right now I'm double booked with another working group at that. So it's we'll see.
Interims in core have a lot of time because most of the time there is not used. So that would be also good, I think. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, thank you, Longwei. And we'll move over to Brewski considerations.
Okay, can you unslide? I get it.
I can give you the slide. And
just bytes 255 above.
Yeah, maybe. 5 operational considerations. Confirm my selection. Okay, so it's Michael Richardson again. The working group adopted 2 documents, the ANIMA MASA considerations and the ANIMA registrar considerations. When do we do that? Since the last IETF, I guess. These documents have been around since 2020. Were originally collections of things, and then after I started them and 8995 was still in the waiting in the RFC editor queue, we actually managed to put a few of the things that we realized were important into 8995 that were operationally important. And then the working group has been considering whether to merge them, which is part of the discussion here. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the document. the documents, what their goals are about, and kind of a little, well, up and down, high and low level parts. So how did they exist? So we had 8994 and 8995. And as I was implementing, there were some things I'm like, oh, wait, this is interoperability concerns. This is other things. And, you know, there. So, so there's two documents evolved. And then out of the master considerations document, I wound up extracting a bunch of stuff about how you describe and talk about a PKI. And that wound up actually finally finding a home in T2T-RG, manufacturer trust anchors. And that's gone through a bunch of revisions, been talked about in a number of things. When I went to Sec Dispatch, actually with it, they asked me to go and talk to industrial people. And I talked a lot to people, talked to a lot of them, asked for reviews and comments, didn't get a lot back. But a lot of enthusiasm, and some of that has now become an industry forum known as the Device Identity Forum, and the link is there on the slide, which was launched in May, and we'll have another meeting in August, and you're welcome, but it's not exactly IETF. And it's maybe 40% marketing with technical marketing and promotion of the concept. So then we have the other what's left. After you remove that, the trust anchors document is about to go through a research group last call. I'm not exactly sure how that differs from a working group last call, but we'll find out. So that's the history. So the three kind of categories of here. There's considerations for the manufacturer. So the manufacturer has to have an IDEV ID in order for Brewski to work. And they need to have some kind of a PKI on that goes into that. And the recommendation is a 2-level PKI, and part of the trust anchor document explains how do you count those 2 levels. You need to have something that signs the vouchers. So you have to actually have another potentially different PKI for doing that. And if you're doing IDEV ID, you might be putting MUD URLs in, and so you need something to sign that, and that could be different or the same, and those are considerations around that. So then we get to the operational part, the enterprise or operator owner of the network. They're going to run a registrar, and that's going to have a PKI for the LDEV IDs that are there. Then they have the question of how do they operate their ACP, and there's a bunch of different thoughts about that. And they're not well developed in this document at this point. Finally, we have the device insides, and it's got a bunch of trust anchors as well that need to happen. Software update trust anchors, voucher validation trust anchors. So there's a connection back and forth across here that you need to think about. Then what other things? So one of the things that came up when building a registrar was the different ways that you can do that. And one of those ways, for instance, is that you might not build it as a single monolithic application. You might, for instance, have a couple of different southbound pledge interfaces. This goes back to the discovery, and do you discover multiple registrar interfaces on the same machine, or they could even be different machines, or a variety of mixes and matches between the two. So since we terminate TLS or DTLS, or maybe even ad hoc ELA interfaces on these different places, and all those things need to have a key pair, private key that they use for their side, and a public key and certificate on the stuff. So then the question is, okay, do I use the same private key everywhere? And that might be a stupid answer. But then the question is, when I contact the MASA, do I use the same key as a client mutual authenticated TLS? And if you decide that you're going to do that, then that restricts the kinds of architectures that you can build in terms of how they scale. And so in this diagram, one of the options is if you decide to do the different things in different ways, then maybe you have to synchronize through the database only. And so there's a couple things that one of the things we actually got into 8995 about which key actually are you pinning and how do you look at things. And so we need a little, this is what one of the part of the document is discussing, that part of it and how does it all go together. Did you want to say something there? No, okay, you're like jumping, Esco's jumping to his, I thought to his mic. So there's different ways of building things and doing things and arranging for things. So that's part of the discussion here, and some of it kind of is non-normative, but also some of it may lead to people deciding that actually we should restrict the, the options to fewer options. So there's this diagram in the operational registrar operations, and the idea, and there's another one for an enterprise and then the home network. And so there's three kind of levels of this. And this diagram was intended to motivate, the concept that you may have registrars in different places and there may be database synchronization issues and there may be other things that you need to think about as you're going to an operational thing, particularly if you're an ISP building an ACP and you're potentially onboarding equipment in one part of the world but you may have network partitions that keep your databases from synchronizing. So you have some issues that you may want to think about. So actually that was not developed very well in that document, and maybe there's nothing to say, in which case we should rip that section out and continue on, but maybe there's other things that, we need to think about. So that's a kind of like, think about what does this mean operationally at an ISP, to have an ISP, worldwide ISP that could be doing things in different places. Maybe rip it out. So operational considerations for the MASA. So the idea is that we're going to have some prescriptive advice on what you probably ought to architect from your PKI and some other things. But it's advice rather than, being completely normative. But please do it this way. These are good ideas, but let's discuss. That's the whole point of the process. And you'll see in this thing there's a little PKI, and the duck has this anchor, because you have to put the anchor into the device at manufacturing time, and you need to think about what kind of an anchor you're going to put in and where is it going to go. So similar kind of consideration for the fact that you have vouchers that you have to sign, and so they have to be verifiable by your devices. So again, you have to put a trust anchor in there, and it could be the same as the IDEV ID trust anchor. It could be different. Well, obviously you need to restrict who can sign a voucher. It needs to be only the manufacturer, but how do you do that? And there are a variety of options, some of which might involve OIDs in certificate chains or something like that. And it's a little bit up to you, the manufacturer, because you can put whatever logic you think is good for identifying the key, you would put in your pledge, but the intermediate registrar doesn't really care, right? So you can do it in different ways, but it's still important to maybe explain that these are important connections. So changes in documents since 107. So I actually pulled these slides out from 108, and there's removed and edited things. And so there's new references. Lots of parts were gutted out of MASA considerations, became this other document. It did find a home. It says if document will find a home. It did find a home. Some other things. So basically what I'm hoping is people will go and will think about what is it they need to know, that what are the choices that maybe affected them that they didn't know. They were pondering, what should I do? What is the best way of doing this? And that's the kind of thing we're trying to write down into this document. So the working group discussed that we might merge these two documents, and I'm all for that. But let's decide what the focus of the merged document is. So here's our three possible, titles that we could go for. They're possible titles, right? And maybe there's actually two documents that have completely different content moved around from different things is a possibility. So I would be interested to know, what is it you're thinking about? And you know, what that essentially informs the title. If we pick the title well, maybe the rest of the document kind of falls out pretty good. Go ahead, Stefan.
Just on the top of my head, I would say go with operational considerations for Brewski, because what the document currently is addressing are different components that are defined within Brewski, like the registrar and also the master. Based on that, my first pick would be number 1.
Thanks. Esco, you're next, I guess.
Yeah, I was also considering number 1 here, especially thinking about ACP, that this particular use case. And in fact, in the constraint drafts, we don't target an ACP. Actually, we say explicitly we don't target that. So it's kind of a mixed control plane and user plane kind of situation there for the constrained mesh networks.
Do you object to the operational considerations for Brewski, including operational considerations for Brewski when implementing an ACP? Or do you think that should be separate?
No, it can be included, I think, and constraint can be another separate topic, but it's all related to Brewski.
Do you think that there are, like in the registrar considerations, there were 2 or 3 diagrams. There was, the one I showed here. There was one for a kind of more enterprise, and there was a home residential small IoT space, which actually didn't have a diagram. Are those for you the 3 kind of deployment scenarios, or is it more subtle or more complicated?
Yeah, I think you can also have IoT deployments in kind of a large scale campus or company, something like that. So
maybe that's a fourth.
Not necessarily home, and they can be kind of mixed with, you could say, regular Brewski routers. At least that's what I see as a possibility. So, for example, if you have border routers for 6-LoWPAN mesh, so those would also need to bootstrap, and that would be like Brewski on Ethernet kind of situation. And once they are bootstrapped, then the wireless IoT devices can follow, basically. So that would be using constrained Brewski, and it's kind of using similar procedure, and maybe the protocols are different, maybe not. I don't know.
I think the choices may be different.
They could use constrained as well, the border routers, because they can use co-op over Ethernet. Fine in principle, but that, I haven't seen any real deployment of that still. It's just was being talked about, but so those are also possible. So IoT at a larger scale, basically.
Torless.
Yeah. So Brewski is fine. I'm very likely going to oppose the operational. When going through the document for adoption, I was looking into a lot of other RFCs with considerations in there. And to me, operational considerations is when all the features are there, and we're just talking about how to configuring them and how to managing them.
What choices should you turn on?
Exactly. Yeah. But the features all need to be already there. Just, how do you use them? As soon, and I still have to review the documents in more detail, as soon as you're talking about, we need a particular feature in there, right? At that point in time, to me, that would be an implementation consideration. And I would just say at that point in time, we're dropping the word operational and having in the title just considerations, and just starting to structure a little bit more like, required features and required operation aspects, right? So, and the adoption description was exactly inclusive of that, right? So it was adopted not to constrain to whatever people feel operational, but, implementation or feature requirements.
So is it almost a profile or an applicability statement then?
No, but I mean, so if you're saying I need a PKI, you need a CA with the following 3 or 4 or 5 features. To me, that is not operational. That's already, I need to implement that, right? So that's why that would clearly fall into the implementation consideration aspect. But so, the title says consideration, it doesn't say operational.
Okay.
And so, the file name says consideration, and the title can change to that as well. if and when we feel that it's useful.
Anybody else? Okay, thanks.
Okay, with that, we've been through the adopted work. So let me bring up the next slide deck. That was planned for Bangkok, but we ran out of time there. So sometimes it's good to mess up the scheduling and get a 2-hour slot. Maybe we should get back to that anyhow, but yeah. So one of the things we had seen, so the last slot is going to talk about a couple more use cases. And when we look about the things we've done so far in ANIMA, the Brewski stuff is very nicely on its way with way too many variations and more to come to make every industry happy. The ACP stuff remains, difficult to implement. So I felt it would be very useful to have an informational draft to describe what you can get by just combining Brewski and Grasp without an ACP. And I think that would be a great starting point for all network automation that we can put on top of it, because you can program all network automation without an ACP. You just have Brewski to get your certificates, you get your trust domains, and Grasp to expand your signaling and discovery and all the things you need for auto-configuring agents. And the ACP can come later, but how do you start thinking about that, and what are you missing? And how do we call it? So the proposal was that we call this the automation network infrastructure with a small a, instead of the autonomous network infrastructure, because you're missing out a few things. And that is really, the thing cannot bring itself up and running completely by itself. You still need a lot of menu configuration to bring up the network. And that's effectively what this document describes. So we're not having an ACP that's automatically built whenever a device gets a certificate, but you just have the data plane. The data plane you need to manually configure, or you have an orchestrator, a controller, some automated provisioning of devices. So whenever a new device is connected, gets a Brewski certificate, you need to start going in there with netconf and starting to configuring the data plane, or you do that through SSH and configure the data plane like you configure networks today. The Grasp stays pretty much unchanged as to the Grasp that we have defined for the ACP. So it is Grasp operating hop by hop now with TLS, end-to-end TLS over the data plane. Brewski, pretty much unchanged. The discovery of the joint proxies is link local, so that doesn't need the ACP. The discovery of registrars uses Grasp over the data plane now. And that could be IPv4 now, that could be IPv6, right? So the whole automation network infrastructure doesn't depend on IPv6 if we figure out they're really, important, like industrial or so, that really love IPv4 and don't go for IPv6. This is an easier way for them to get started than to, be forced to upgrade to IPv6. And the domain security concept also maintains unchanged. So we have the same type of certificates that we have in the ACP, only that we slightly modify them so it's clear this is an ACP-free certificate and you're just using the data plane. So just 1 or 2 flags changed. So it's pretty much a lot of really simple changes. And then, of course, the description, what are you missing, right? So the downside are, yeah, you need to depend on the data plane to use everything, but that just means it's not worse than it's now. You're just adding, really simple application level processes for Brewski and Grasp. You don't need to mess around with new forwarding plane things, IPsec and VRFs and sub-interfaces and all the things that make the ACP difficult. But of course, you're losing the capability that if you mess up the data plane, you cannot reach the devices anymore. That was what the ACP was giving you, and by not having the ACP, well, you're still as bad as you were in before, right? So we're simply, by not having the ACP, we're not solving a specific subset of what the full autonomic network infrastructure gives you, right? But yeah, it is very simple to implement. You're just writing some, Rust applications you're running in the control plane for Grasp, for Brewski, right? So you don't need to get into the nitty-gritty details of routers, right, that the ACP needs to do. So that's basically the scope of the document, the simple scope. Now, of course, it wouldn't be a document from me if it wouldn't have a complex part of it. And that is really that one of the things the ACP was giving you as well was to have connectivity across parts in the network where connectivity is difficult. A firewall, a NAT, different VRFs, right? So all these things the ACP could poke through. And so there is a section that describes how to do this, pretty much with a generalization of what we've done with the Brewski proxy, which is that if you have some service, some automation stuff that needs to be available across those different segments in the network, well, wherever there is a box that separates, like, oh, here the network is IPv4, on the other side it's IPv6, well, you need to write yourself a small application layer gateway that uses GRASP to discover on one side and announce on the other side, right? And then you're forwarding the traffic either by a TCP proxy or by relying on whatever NAT is already in the forwarding plane. So I listed all these different options that are available there, right? So that, of course, is terribly complex, but that is the life that we already went through with NAT and firewalls. And so we've pretty much done exactly this. And this is a clean approach to do it because you're explicitly getting the announcement by GRASP. You know what is announced. You set up your policy, what is going to be forwarded. So it's not kind of magic happening in some strange NAT module, but it's now well programmed. So that was basically the first round. I'd love to see reviews and feedback. And I think in 124, I'm going to ask for adoption. So it's just an informational document just to basically allow people to see how easy it is to start with autonomic networking, build automation agents, and then just hopefully get from somebody some nicely working GRASP and Brewski. Any questions, comments? Okay. Then let me finish with the last slide deck and pretty much this. Yep.
Yeah, this is Xin. I'm very glad to see such document, which is very helpful. Encourage the people to use our ANIMA product. But I would like to see more reviews and more potential customers to see this, right?
Oh, yeah, sure. I mean, and as you'll see, I mean, why the heck do you think I did this, right? So the whole point was about enabling people who are thinking about autonomic service agents, right? Automation agent. And that's what the next presentation is about. How can they easily get started if we're asking them that they have to support Brewski and GRASP and ACP, right? That makes it a lot harder. So this thing is meant to say to people who want to work on ASA, here is a smaller subset of ANIMA that you need to rely on. Brewski for certificates, GRASP for the signaling for the discovery, that's all you need, and that can easily be implemented, and hopefully we'll also have open source code available for that, right? So this is in conjunction with exactly the next presentation.
Right. I mean, may I ask, do you already have some kind of potential customers in your mind? I mean, any one very specific one? The reason I ask this question is, if you could find out one of such potential customers and get him to go through this with you and get guide from you from this document to really deploy our ANIMA stuff. So his experience under the guide of this document would be very useful to improve this document.
Right. So no, I mean, the whole point is this document's written in support of exactly the type of use cases that we collected in the interim. So let me bring up the slides.
Okay.
So this is the last slot. And this is we also tried to do this last time, but we ran out of time. So this was the interim for collecting ideas for new use cases that could be translated into ANIMA work on what we haven't worked on so far, but what we have in the charter for some time, which is the autonomic service agents, right? So use cases of what we run on top of the autonomic infrastructure, or, as I'm proposing now to make the starting point easier, on just the automation network infrastructure, just Brewski and Grasp, right? Just the smallest subset on which you can start to build intelligent automation. So, and of course, that interim was recorded, and you're more than welcome to review it in detail. And we're in ongoing discussion with the proponents of the proposals to help them move them forward and see how we can help them to bring them into a format that they can be brought as drafts to ANIMA. And I think this is one of those slide decks again where it's cutting down on the bottom. So I'm not sure what happened here. I'm not sure why the scale doesn't work. I'm sorry about that. Right. So so we had 8 presentations there. So there was autonomic distributed troubleshooting from Leo Bing, knowledge modeling methods for IP network fault management from Hunting, application responsive network from Yang Feng, automatic network congestion relief, so kind of service quality management from Qin Zhao, autonomic mobility capability negotiation mechanisms from Jiwai, bootstrap of campus networks and service VLAN auto deployment, so some automation specifically for all the complex layer 2 segmentation and partitioning that happens in enterprise networks. So that was pretty much similar to some of the things that very early on when we did Autonomic in Cisco was also on our mind. Home broadband autonomic installation maintenance, and then distributed operations of NASR, which is another form of particular services in the forwarding plane that requires, for example, topology discovery and then potentially per node management of policies for the forwarding plane. So, and I'm not going to talk about any of these in details, right? So there's the slides are there, there's the notes there, the video recording. So we're discussing with these people and looking which one might most easily convert itself into ANIMA. So what I was presenting there, so I clicked next slide, but nothing happens, right? What I was trying to explain is exactly how do you bring these use cases into ANIMA so that they can be standardized in some way in ANIMA. So and it's pretty much the work that we can do in ANIMA are extensions, modifications to existing ANIMA components like Brewski, like Grasp, like ACP, like the certificate management, and how the new work will interwork with existing deployments, but primarily also the ASA, right? So whatever automation you're running on some router, right, whether it is standalone or whether it is communicating with some orchestrator in the background, that can be described as an ASA, right? So, and these ASA do not need to use any of the existing ANIMA components, right? So if they're happy just to speak netconf, but there are some intelligent agent functionality on the router, that's perfectly fine, right? But we shouldn't, like we have not done so far in ANIMA, reinvent new things that are already in existence, right? And then, of course, what we always like to see is some minimum proof of concept work being done in conjunction with the specification, so that enough due diligence has been done to know that what is being specified does actually work, right? And that it's not missing a lot of things that people would immediately stumble over when they do start to implement things. And so what specifically on ASAs can be then standardized. So I've tried to, let me see, I'm on 5, and yeah. So this is a little bit convoluted and maybe a little bit overwhelming for new people, but that's one of the old ANIMA slides. So you've got a bunch of routers and switches. You've got these agents, some script program application running on them, and they can use Grasp to talk to each other, discover each other. They can talk to a controller, and they may be able, if there is an ACP, to have even during the bootstrap phase connectivity. And of course, the most important thing is that they can't talk to each other securely, something which in the past has always been the struggle of distributed intelligence, right? The only guys you were trusting to do something securely was a network controller. By being able to have Brewski provision automatically security certificates in all devices, they can talk to each other and know they can trust each other, right? And that didn't exist in before, which is why we really feel that Brewski is really crucial, right? So this is the space in which this automation lives. Automation as exposed by, we call it ASA, just, any form of automation decentralized on the routers and on some central components like controller, PCE, what have you. And then the standardization really is, well, how do these components talk to each other? What's the protocol to talk them? What are the APIs into that, right? Are you having some REST HTTP interface? Do you want to do it over CoAP, or, which we would love the most, do you want to do new things that we can do with Grasp? I think most likely discovery will very easily fall into that, because network-wide discovery, outside of what we've done in ANIMA, we don't have good solutions for that. So this is basically the list on the left-hand side of all those things that can be standardized from these automation things in ANIMA, right? So it's just a matter of putting it around the ANIMA terminology, which I think is a very clean abstraction model of how to go beyond, let's say, what IETF has done so far, which is not describing any particular processes with protocols in general, but just, Yang models spoken to a controller. So so that was the summary, and it takes a little while, because most of the people that were on that site meeting had not been to ANIMA in before, so it takes a little while for us, somewhat longer, to help them and work with them, and hopefully towards Shenzhen next year we'll have done more progress on that. But one guy is already here. The NASA people, of course, are active here in the IETF, so maybe that's also an interesting starting point. Okay, any questions? All right, then I think we're done. Sheng, do you want to say last words? I think we're through the agenda.
I still have a word regarding to the last topic. Sorry for being late. Weston, I feel a little bit disappointed from that successful interim meeting. We don't see that much follow-up from these proposals afterwards. I think, I did reach some of them, but what I found is, those guys are not regular IETF attender yet.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them has the future plan to become IETF regular participants, but they did something to start, and they did hope what they proposed for the ANIMA could become their starter. But they do need more help.
Yep.
Therefore, I think the informational document you post is very helpful for them. But I think they need more. Maybe after this meeting, you and I could reach out. Some of them, as you said, we also need to most easier.
There's a lot of really bad feedback, so I think that comes from you. Just if you make sure that your speaker is down or so while you're talking.
Oh, sorry. Anyway, you hear what I said, right?
Yeah, yes, I did. It's just difficult to understand. Maybe I can add one more thing on that. So I definitely think that, some environment to start prototyping, doing some experimentation with writing some ASA stuff would be helpful. So there definitely is a little bit of the job that we should see how to do that. I mean, Michael has already started to do great jobs with, setting up VM with Brewski and other things also for Nasser. So I think the grasp component would be missing in that. But then if we can wrap that type of software up as packages that people could use, maybe that's another parallel way forward to help, especially people from universities to experiment, have students build code, and that might be, the better starting point than just sticking to the textual explanations of how to get toward a draft.
Yes and no. Speaking from the perspective of a university professor, yes, we do have students, but the students has actually under pressure to do some academic research, which is not the IETF kind of engineer work. So that's some kind of conflict in there for students and the professors. So we'll see. We will find out the right resource to sponsor them, or some staff to work on those implementations. Right.
I think from my experience, it's easier to write a research paper over some implementation that you did, just describing the implementation and some form of results that you gained from them, kind of running experiments with them, right? So you do some resilience, you switch off equipment and it recovers or so, then trying to build a research paper purely from a draft you're writing on a theoretical way, right? So I was specifically thinking of researchers and how to get them to be productive, and hopefully that is through running code.
That will have to be based on the innovation they already made. Which is
definitely. And if they implement some new ASA code, I think that certainly is innovation, right? That is not something that existed in before.
Not academic innovation. I mean, when we say innovation, I only realize that is quite different when we see innovation from the company perspective, or it's quite different from the innovation we will say from the university academic perspective.
Well, I have been in recent year to a couple of conferences that, for example, we're just looking in router forwarding plane. So, everything you implemented in P4, however crappy it was considered innovation from researchers. So I think, what you would do in an ASA certainly lives up at least to that level of, complexity and new thought. It may not be as difficult to program as P4, so that complexity goes away, but, achieving some interesting form of automation certainly is equally, innovative, I think.
Okay, we'll see. I'll try my best to concentrate people to work on this. Also, if you guys have some, time to visiting China, particularly in Beijing, we can arrange some meetings with those proposals and help them face to face, right? Bing?
Yes, so a little bit comment on the interim meeting. From my perspective, I was actually pretty excited to see the new use cases, especially from the operators. But I also discussed with a couple of the presenters from the operators. My impression was that maybe the current reference model of ANIMA is too complex for them, for the newcomers. Maybe we can do some update work, like the ACP-free work, that to decouple all the components and to make people be aware of what's the minimal requirements for them to utilize the ANIMA technology. And another trend is that we can see nowadays there are a lot of work, especially in NMRG. People are using AI technology to do the ops. And I think the ANIMA architecture naturally support that. Maybe we can also consider what's the impact of the AI technologies, especially for the AI agent relevant topics. Can maybe we also need to consider the reference model to be updated to more friendly to accept the new work. Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Anybody else? Sheng, do you want to close down the meeting?
Sure. We have very good meeting today, longer than our regular 1 hour slides, 1 hour session. Actually, that could means we could have request more time for the next meeting and the meeting in the future. So hope we can still have very good discussing using our mailing list, which is officially IETF working place, and hope we can be in better and faster way to move our working group quicker. All right. See you all in next meeting. All right.
Thank you. Bye now.
Bye.